We just spoke with our tax expert, Thomas Spade, on why local homeowners are being reassessed on their property taxes this year. If you don't agree with the county, you do have the option to appeal. Here to help us is Ellison, partner at Womble Bond Dickinson. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so you can appeal, but there is no guarantee.
There are very few guarantees in life, and this is certainly not one of them.
So tell us a little bit more about the appeals process. And if someone receives their assessment, we're not talking about their actual bill. We're talking about the reassessment where they can see the value and how much it's jumped up. If they say, hey, wait a second, I haven't done any improvements, I haven't added a pool, et cetera, how do they go about arguing about it?
Well, the first thing, Leyla, that they need to do is they need to look at the notice and be very mindful of the deadline for filing an appeal. Because in a year in which the county is doing countywide reassessment, it's a different deadline. It's 90 days essentially from the date of the notice. But one of the things that one needs to look at is the date of valuation, because in Charleston County for this cycle, and it's a 5-year cycle, the date of valuation is December 31st, 2018, not December 31st, 2019. And so what the county assessor is charged with doing is valuing the property as of that valuation date.
So if there's anything that we've learned in the last year plus is that real estate prices have gone down, value has gone down.
There are people who would argue with that. Let's just say the market is certainly up in the air right now. It's not very clear. In some ways, the market has actually improved. But the impact of COVID-19 on real estate values is yet to be determined, and we're talking primarily about residences here, but particularly if we take it in the context of retail, that has clearly gone down, except that what the assessor is charged with doing is valuing as of that earlier valuation date.
So when I hear what you're saying, this is where I would raise my hand and I say, wait a second, that's not fair.
It's what the statute says. And so
how does someone challenge that then?
Well, you can't challenge the date of valuation, but if you're challenging the value itself, you also have to look at that notice and distinguish between a few things. And the most important thing to distinguish between is between the assessed value or the fair market value and the capped value, which is often in place. And I don't know if some of the people you've spoken to earlier talked about that difference, but again, under state law, when you're going through countywide reassessment, the assessed value can only increase by 15% in any cycle. And that makes a big difference in determining whether an appeal is worthwhile doing or not, because appeals can get very expensive. So for example, the property owner can always appeal. You don't have to hire anybody in order to file the appeal, but you got to meet the deadline. But if you want some person to do it for you, then you have to hire somebody who has certain licenses, such as a lawyer, an accountant, a real estate agent, and they can file it for you, but they have to file also a power of attorney with it. And the savings may well not be worth it in most instances.
And I want to talk a little bit more about getting inside the assessor's head. So if there is a number that you're just not agreeing with and you'd like to know, well, where in the world did they pull that from? Which thin air did they pull that number from? I want to talk about that in the second half of this interview. So we're going to take a break here. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We've been chatting with Ellison. He's a partner at Womble Bond Dickinson. We've been talking about appealing your property assessment, your property taxes. You know what? They're going up. 5 years has passed. It's time for that clock to restart. So you were just mentioning that the reassessment that they're judging by is where properties were December of 2018, not December 2019. And as we mentioned, properties in 2018 were valued higher than they were in 2019 and have since dropped with unknown consequences due to COVID, et cetera. So you're just mentioning about when it's worth actually challenging the reassessment. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay. Well, contrary to many people's belief, the assessor is not trying to achieve the highest possible value. When the assessor goes and values residential properties, the assessor is generally using something called mass appraisal techniques. And in most instances, I think this is true of Charleston County this year, they have a computer program which looks at comparable sales, and they're trying to compare the sales that took place in the marketplace prior to December 31st, 2018. And what the assessor is charged with doing is trying to determine what a willing buyer would pay to a willing seller as of that date, with nobody being forced to sell or being forced to buy. And the difficulty with mass appraisal techniques is that it doesn't always get it right. If you hire an individual, and I'm not advocating this for a tax appeal, at least initially, if you hire an appraiser, the appraiser is charged with valuing that property as of that valuation date, using standards that are set forth by the Appraisal Institute and other governing bodies. But mass appraisal techniques don't always get it right. So you need to look at that. And you also have to distinguish between value and taxes. So if you have a valuation, that doesn't mean that taxes are going up, because what happens is that the local governing bodies set something called a millage rate, which is the actual tax rate, and you multiply the assessment, which is found, again, on the notice. You multiply that by the millage rate, and in broad strokes, that gives you the amount of taxes. And in many years, not necessarily this year, I don't know, because the millage rate has not yet been set, in many years, even though the values of the properties go up, the millage rates go down.
All right, so I appreciate you spelling it out for us, because I think when you receive that reassessment notice, it just looks like a bunch of numbers and you wonder, where did they pull them from? You have no clue. It doesn't have any real explanation as to how they come to these numbers. But you were saying that sometimes it's worth it and sometimes it's not. So it can get expensive. And if your property taxes, if they're assessing your property taxable value by $20,000, could cost that much just to hire an attorney and experts to challenge it with no guarantee that the assessor is going to accept it. What would you say is sort of the benchmark number where people should really start to say, I think I should go for it. I think I should challenge this?
Well, again, Leyla, the property owner can always do it by himself or by herself. But if you're talking about a difference in a value of about $20,000, that is almost certainly not worth hiring anybody to do the appeal for you. One other thing that I think the viewers might be interested in knowing is that, again, if they decide that it is worth appealing, that doesn't mean they don't have to pay the taxes. A lot of people think that if you appeal, you don't have to pay the taxes. There is, however, an option that if you appeal, you can pay only 80% of the taxes under something that's usually referred to as an 80% tax bill. That's all well and good, except if you are not successful in the appeal, not only do you have to pay 100%, you also have to pay interest on that amount.
Right. Okay. So would you say if $20,000 is not a worthy amount to challenge it, how about $100,000?
$100,000 is worth looking at pretty hard.
It is. Okay. All right. Well, you've given us some really good tips, Morris. I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. My pleasure.
We're back after this.